It's a case that has gripped North Alabama for more than 5 years. You've probably seen this video already. It's from April 3rd of 2018. It shows the moments before a former Huntsville police officer shot and killed a suicidal man. Fast forward 3 years. That officer, William Ben Darby, was convicted of murdering that man, Jeffrey Parker. Darby served more than a year of his 25-year sentence in Limestone Correctional before the Alabama Court of Criminal Appeals overturned his conviction. The court found the judge in the case failed to instruct the jury to consider Darby's police training when deciding his fate. Darby's been home for 4 months now, awaiting a new trial in December. The district attorney still says the shooting was unjustified, believing the evidence will lead to another conviction. Darby's wife, on the other hand, maintains his innocence based on evidence she says was not allowed in court. I sat down with both of them for an exclusive interview ahead of the high-profile retrial.
Ben Darby needs to remain a free man because he did exactly as he was trained by Huntsville Police Department.
Keelan Darby is fighting for that second chance for freedom for her husband, getting the word out about what she says really happened that day 5 years ago.
It's according to what the law says. And what the law says does not correlate with what happened to him when he was convicted of murder.
That conviction overturned following a trial Darby says was unfair, unconstitutional, and unjust, with the judge disallowing witnesses and evidence.
Our attorneys fought hand over fist to get information into that trial and weren't allowed to. Every time that we objected, our lawyers objected, it was denied. Every time the prosecution objected, it was sustained. Every time.
The jury, she says, wasn't offered much of a choice.
Honestly, they didn't make the correct decision because they weren't given all the information they were supposed to have.
Information like legal precedents, appellate court cases that decided in favor of officers in similar circumstances, and witnesses who could testify about police training involving encounters with suspects holding deadly weapons.
There were several witnesses that weren't allowed to testify to Ben's training. A training instructor that Ben had who taught him action versus reaction, which is what all law enforcement is taught in the state of Alabama and nationwide, that concept. That wasn't allowed to be introduced.
It's a case that's pitted police against prosecutors, usually two sides of the same coin.
There was no justification for Ben Darby to kill this man.
Madison County District Attorney Robert Broussard maintains that Jeffrey Parker was a troubled man who needed help and was not a threat to police.
And Ben Darby kills him point blank with a slug right in the face. A guy in a mental health crisis who was completely docile. I don't care who you are. Like any other citizen, you're accountable for what you do.
Former Officer Darby was the third officer on the scene that day. He grabbed his shotgun and ran into the house. Officer Ganesha Pegues was standing in the room talking to Parker, who was sitting on the couch with the gun to his head. She had her gun holstered. Darby immediately told her to point her gun at Parker, while yelling at Parker to put his gun down. He did not comply. 11 seconds later, Darby shot him in the head. He claimed at trial that he acted according to his training to protect himself and the other officers.
Absolutely not true. That's not what their training is. That's what he said their training is, but that's not what it is. An imminent danger is described when somebody exhibits some hostility towards you, that they are going to kill you, and it must be certain, immediate, and unequivocal. Then you have Darby flying in screaming, 18-month rookie, screaming at everybody, screaming for him to put the gun down. The guy does not budge, and he shoots him in the face with a 12-gauge shotgun. It's not justified.
Keelan Darby believes officers could have been hurt or killed had her husband not intervened.
The lack of control those two officers had on the scene.
These were veteran officers, though, right?
They were, but just because you're a veteran officer doesn't mean you are a better officer than a younger officer.
But the rule is you can't shoot somebody unless you can articulate that they were about to shoot you. The facts are whatever they are. And it'll come to trial again, and we'll see what happens.
With their futures on hold until the December retrial, Keelan says she feels more confident this time. A new judge, new jury, and an open courtroom after COVID forced a lockdown of the proceedings the first time around.
I've fought tirelessly for my husband, and I will continue to do so until this is rectified. And we are done with this process and we can move on.
Again, Darby's retrial begins with jury selection on December 11th. We have more information and the full interviews with Keelan Darby and District Attorney Broussard on our website, waytv.com.